Welcome to today's edition of the IntoTexas AI podcast. It's your look at AI news and trends impacting Texas. I'm your host, Shannon Belew. Let's get started. Big investments, hidden moves, and the first signs of resistance. This is the news roundup for the week of May 11th, 2026. This week, Texas continued to strengthen its position as one of the nation's most important AI hubs. A global manufacturer announced nearly $1 billion in new investment and 1,700 jobs in Fort Worth. A small but ambitious company revealed a modular AI infrastructure project in South Texas, and new edge computing capacity came online in Corpus Christi, while researchers at the University of Texas at Austin raised concerns about the water demands of data centers. And in a sign that local communities are beginning to weigh the trade-offs, Hill County temporarily paused new data center development. Together, all of these stories show that Texas is not only attracting AI investment, it is also confronting the real-world questions that come with becoming the physical backbone of artificial intelligence. So let's get into the top AI stories in Texas for the week of May 11th, 2026. We're going to start with Celestica, who committed $867 million to Fort Worth. The Canadian-based company announced plans to invest approximately almost $1 billion in a new manufacturing campus in Alliance, Texas, which is just north of Fort Worth. The project is expected to create around 1,700 jobs, with just under 500 of those jobs expected to come online by the end of 2028. And the mainly skilled positions are in engineering, advanced manufacturing, quality assurance, and supply chain operations. And there are reports that average salaries for these positions could be around $75,000 annually. So Celestica builds the electronic systems that power servers, networking equipment, and other infrastructure needed for AI workloads. And as part of the deal, it was also reported that the city of Fort Worth approved a 10-year tax abatement for the project. This is a reminder that the AI boom is not only creating software jobs, but it's also generating demand for skilled manufacturing talent and supply chain capacity. It's very important. In the next top story, we look at Hill County, Texas, which hit paused as another community in Red Oak gave the green light on new data centers. So in one of the first major local pushbacks against Texas AI infrastructure expansion, Hill County approved a 1-year moratorium on new data centers in unincorporated areas. A 300-acre proposal for a data center campus ignited the debate, with residents raising concerns about water usage, electricity demand, noise pollution, and just the general long-term effects on its rural community. Look, this isn't truly surprising as a development, right? We've certainly seen this play out in other communities. Hill County is just around 55 miles south of Fort Worth, but it's still a very small community. And the moratorium is allegedly designed to give county officials time to just better understand the pros and cons of large-scale data center growth in their community. Other rural communities have considered similar moratoriums, but have so far rejected the idea. Now, on the flip side, we saw another community move forward with approvals to support a new data center, despite a lot of protests from residents. This occurred in the city of Red Oak, which is just south of Dallas, where it approved the rezoning of approximately 830 acres, and this was primarily agricultural land, in order to make way for a new data center. Now, residents had been actively protesting the expansion and the rezoning approval, citing concerns over traffic congestion, pollution, water issues, very similar to the ones that we've seen play out in communities, all over Texas that are looking at data center expansion. And for Red Oak, this approval, like many other communities, it does mean more tax revenue for the city. But as it's quickly becoming a major data center hub in its own right, there are lots of other considerations. And I think this particular campus is being developed by Compass. And according to initial reports, it would have multiple data centers along with multiple substations. I think one report I saw was as many as 10 or maybe even up to a dozen data centers on this one particular project. Now, the thing that's also very interesting to me is that the city is already home to a handful of active or planned data center projects. So they're really becoming a hub for data centers, and I can understand why, residents are questioning how much is enough or how much is too much. As communities all over are asking whether the benefits justify the strain on local resources, we're likely to see this debate grow as more counties face proposals for these large-scale AI infrastructure projects. Well, this takes us to our third story, which is around IntoTexas AI. They're expanding in Corpus Christi. They announced this week a new edge data center in Corpus Christi with additional regional expansion supporting areas such as Victoria. Now, unlike some of the hyperscale facilities that we often talk about, edge data centers are typically smaller and located closer to end users. Potential applications might include telemedicine, school district technology, electronic health records, local business applications, and even disaster recovery. So this type of expansion extends AI infrastructure beyond major metros, and it does give some of these smaller Texas communities that typically aren't thought of or looked at for major data center projects a more direct role in the AI economy in the state. Now, this takes us over to some news out of the University of Texas at Austin this week, where they raised the question about water and data centers. So researchers at UT Austin have been examining how rapid growth in data center construction could affect Texas water supplies over the coming decades. And as AI workloads expand, cooling requirements are increasing. They're placing additional pressure on water systems in a state that's already challenged by oftentimes drought and definitely population growth. So according to this new white paper from the university, it looks like data centers could account for up to 9% of the state's water usage by 2040. Now, this would grow from where it currently is today, which they say is about 1%. And to give you a comparison, manufacturing today across the state consumes 7%. Now, these figures do take into account both water used for cooling the data centers as well, once they're built, as well as water production required to power the data centers. And look, given water is one of the primary issues raised by residents close to or living in communities with rapid data center growth, like the two that we just discussed, this research certainly reinforces some of those concerns. Now, the report was conducted by the Compass Research Consortium. It's an initiative by the University of Texas at Austin's Bureau of Economic Geology, which looks at the impact of data centers on Texas's grid and its resources. So I think we'll see probably lots more research and data coming out of this. It gives us the opportunity to have these discussions around infrastructure and how we solve some of these problems. We know we need the compute power. We know we need these data centers. So how do we find the solutions that provide the compromise? And I think that's what makes these stories really interesting. Now, next we go over to another smaller company, AZO AI, which it made a move in South Texas. This one's kind of interesting. I wanted to highlight a story that maybe didn't get as much coverage, but I think is still one we should keep our eyes out for. So this one is a company that announced a multi-megawatt infrastructure order tied to a modular AI data center initiative based in South Texas. And according to a company press release, the South Texas site is designed to support incremental expansion as additional compute capacity is deployed against an established on-site energy foundation. The company also noted that a core differentiator of this South Texas deployment is its reliance on behind-the-meter natural gas power generation. So this model allows AZO AI to deploy compute infrastructure independent of traditional grid constraints while maintaining the alignment between energy supply and compute demand. This essentially translates to lower, more consistent and predictable energy cost, continuous 24/7 power availability, among many other benefits. And we should also note that AZO AI is in the process of being acquired by Envirotech Vehicles, where this order originated from. So as the company states on its website and in the release about this, AZO AI and Envirotech Vehicles Inc. have previously disclosed a strategic framework under evaluation. That just means that they've been talking about a merger, it's in process, and they just need to disclose that. So, okay, look, while this project, again, did not receive major headlines, it does point, I think, to an important trend that smaller entrepreneurial companies are finding opportunities in the rapidly expanding AI infrastructure market. And look, not every meaningful AI story has to come from one of the global technology giants. So I love seeing the news of successes and expansion and new ideas from smaller companies. Well, now let's make the jump in our final segment to a much larger company, and that's Waymo, who made the news this week for recalling more than 3,500 of their vehicles. Look, Waymo issued this recall, which again, it affected these autonomous vehicles that it operates across Texas in particular, other states as well, but we have a lot of them here in Texas. And this particular recall comes after reports that some of its robotaxis collided with gates, chains, and other roadway barriers. Now, there was also one particular story that came out of San Antonio just 2 or 3 weeks back at the most, where the Waymo actually went into a flooded roadway in San Antonio when they were having major rainfall. And again, we were very fortunate. They were fortunate. There were no passengers in the car at the time, so no one was hurt. But along with that big incident, these other incidents that they've mentioned, it just caused the need to do a recall. Again, no major injuries reported with any of them, but it does highlight an important truth about AI in the physical world, right? Even the most advanced autonomous systems continue to learn through software updates and real-world experience. So recalling these cars to address the software issue that they think is causing these bugs is important, but it's part of the ongoing learning process that we expect. If this story interests you, we invite you to check out one of our other recent episodes where we do explore the state of autonomous vehicles expanding in Texas. And we do take a look in that story at Waymo, Tesla, Zoox, and others, which are reshaping transportation across the state. All right, as we wrap up today, consider the two sides of this week's headlines of how AI is shaping the Texas economy. On one hand, you have investment that continues to surge. And then on the other hand, you've got communities and researchers who are starting to ask tougher questions about sustainability, water, electricity, and local impact. At the end of the day, artificial intelligence is no longer just a software story. It is a manufacturing story in Fort Worth. It is an infrastructure story in Corpus Christi in South Texas. It's a research story in Austin. It's a policy story in Hill County. And it's a transportation story unfolding on roads across Texas and beyond. And this is why Texas remains one of the most important places in the world to watch the future of AI. Thanks for listening to today's episode. I'm Shannon Belew, and if you'd like to continue getting insights and recaps of the big trending news stories of the week, please be sure to listen again, watch again, share, and subscribe. Thank you for joining. I'll see you next time.